Welcome to Salt and Light with Pastor Randy Mitchell. Jesus said to his disciples, "Ye are the salt of the earth and the light of the world." Salt and Light confronts the difficult and often controversial issues that affect today's culture. The only hope for this generation is for more people to follow Jesus Christ and for his followers to be salt and light in their community. Pastor Randy will discuss the Bible solutions to help us know what God says about the problems we face today. Salt and Light is a ministry of Temple Baptist Church in Statesville, North Carolina. Here's your host, Pastor Randy Mitchell.
The Bible says in the book of Romans, chapter number 13 and verse number 1, "Let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God." Welcome to Salt and Light, a very important part of Scripture that tells us clearly that human government is something that is ordained by God. Now, if you know anything about human history, you know that there have been many different forms of government throughout human history. You've got certainly the times of the monarchs or the kings. There have been benevolent kings, there have been tyrant kings, and yet we have something in this great nation, and it is a great nation, and certainly our prayers are for our nation. We've got something coming up in just a few weeks called an election, and it's going to take place on November 5th, and today's broadcast is going to be focused on this upcoming election. Now, we have the privilege, and it is a privilege, folks, to have some say-so in who rules over us. That is something that is, you talk about an experiment. Our founding fathers said it was an experiment, that we have a republic with a democratic form of government. We're not a democracy. We have democracy as part of our process, but we are a republic, a nation of laws. But the fact that we have a say-so in who rules over us is an amazing privilege. It's a freedom, a liberty that we often take for granted. I think that any American citizen that does not go out and vote, regardless of who you vote for, is really doing a disgrace to those who bled and died and suffered. And if you know anything about the history of our great nation, there was great suffering that the patriots went through, them and their families, in order to provide us this freedom. I think it's a great disgrace and dishonor to their sacrifice if we don't exercise that privilege to vote. And so, yes, God ordains the higher powers, but yet there's different types of governments, and I'm thankful that He has given us the liberty to have some say-so in who rules over us. We have a couple of very special guests here today. First of all, special guest, no stranger to Salt and Light, my wife, Lynn Mitchell. Good to have you on the broadcast,
Good morning,
Lynn.
to our listeners.
Yeah, you've been on Salt and Light now. This is your third time in, 6 weeks or so?
I guess so.
Kind of getting used to this. I think our listeners might say, let's keep this up. But thank you for being on the broadcast. And then our very special guest today is Mrs. June Reeves. And June, you are a member of the Iredell Board of Elections. Did I say all of that right?
You did. Thank you for having me. Yes.
Welcome to Salt and Light. I'm so thankful that you have taken time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot of responsibilities on your plate, especially here with the next few weeks coming up to the election, and you chose to take time out of your busy schedule to come and be part of this because we want to talk about voter integrity or election integrity. We all know that 4 years ago there were all kinds of question marks, and we're not going to get into the ins and the outs, what's true and what's not true. It's past history. We can't undo it. We can't change it. But obviously 4 years ago there were a lot of question marks. You can't deny that fact that people had questions on both sides of the equation, and people need to know that they can trust that their vote is going to count. And I think that integrity is something that is so, all of the institutes of authority or government in our nation, there is a real loss of integrity. It seems like people just want to win. June, I was here years ago when I first became a hockey fan. I was watching a championship game, and I saw the goaltender, the goalie, that the puck crossed the line, and he reached back, hoping that the ref didn't see it. He reached back and tried to scoot it back across the line. And I thought, okay, Someone once said that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I get it. We want to win. But I wondered if they would have won the championship, if the ref didn't see it, I wonder if it would really have felt fulfilling, knowing in their heart of hearts that they didn't really win it, that they had to cheat in order to win. And integrity is something that is lost in our culture on a government level. From a pastor's standpoint, churches have just integrity has went out the window, which means credibility has went out the window. People need to have some trust in the credibility of those that are in charge, or they're not going to want to participate. And so having said all of that, and that was a long introduction and a long preface, you're here to help our people in our area understand what's going on regarding election integrity. So we've got a few minutes left in this segment. Let's talk a little bit about, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll get more into it after the break.
Okay. And I understand where you're coming from, because that's kind of what got me propelled into this arena. Everybody's watching on TV what they're saying's happen and all that stuff. And I know when I first I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about it. So one thing that I think is very a positive from all this is more people are engaged. I'm learning how our whole election system works, and I didn't know that before, which when I learned that, then it propels me to learn how our laws made. I mean, it's a continuation of learning. I've got a love of learning. That's one of my character strengths. And you'll find out another one has been my ability to ask questions. I get picked on by my family about how many questions I ask, but I have curiosity. And so once I learn things, I like to educate others if they're, up to that. So I began about 3 years ago with election integrity and learning the whole process. And one thing that stands out in my mind, when I went to the Board of Elections here in Iredell County, when I first got involved, one of the ladies she's worked here for years, godly woman, and they all do a great, great job. They obey the law. They want to dot every I, cross every T. But she said, if there's any cheating going on, we don't know where it is. Mm-hmm. And, that was the first comment I had. And being my inquisitive self, I was still, but I've got to prove it. I've just got to prove it. Mm-hmm. And so I started learning the ins and outs of the election process. And I agree with her. If there's something going on, it's not right in that office, because that is a dynamite office that I have full confidence in. And so then, after education, my goal began to be to let others know the process, because we do need everyone to feel secure and safe and knowing that their vote counts. And so I want to encourage people to vote.
Well, and that's what integrity is all about. Mm-hmm. I mean, you take the actual meaning of integrity, it means honest, it means whole, something that's complete and undivided. And so if something has integrity, then not only is there intention for honesty, but there's also accountability and responsibility to ensure that, like you said, I like the way you put that, every I is dotted, every T is crossed. We have different forms of accountability and observation because, humans are human. And like I said, the goalie tries to cheat in order to win the championship, and people have agendas. And so you have to have that multiple levels of accountability. I want to talk about that a little bit more here after the break. What are the different layers of accountability? When people go in to vote, all we know is we fill in our little circles or we, go up to the booth. But what happens after that? Mm-hmm. I mean, oftentimes it's just a big mystery and it doesn't all go into one database and just automatically get counted. And so I want to talk about that after the breaks. Folks, stay tuned. Welcome back to Salt and Light. We are talking about voter integrity. As you know, we are just weeks away from what could end up being one of the most important elections in our lifetime, maybe the most important election in the history of our great nation. Time will certainly tell. I think everybody has that gut feeling and that sense how pivotal that this upcoming election is. And so we have with us a very special guest. Of course, I have got my wife, Lynn Mitchell, here. But also Miss June Reeves, who is on the Iredell County Board of Elections. And so we want to talk a little bit, Ms. June, about how the election process, the different safeguards. We talked about integrity, accountability, making sure that every vote counts, that there aren't votes that shouldn't be counted, and so forth. How does that process work? I know as a voter, I've always been a little bit, I distrusted that somebody there is doing something right. Sometimes the volunteer ladies that hand me my ballot, and you just think, well, they must be part of this. And a lot of times people don't know and understand how all of that works. And explain that process to us.
Well, first I want to talk about registration, because when you do register, you have to provide your driver's license number or the last 4 of your Social Security number, your name, your address. So at the Board of Elections, they're checking all that to make sure that all matches and that that's correct. They will send out a mailing to you, to your address that you provide. And if that mailing does not come back from the post office as undeliverable or a wrong address, then they send out two contacts to make sure that mailing address that you gave is your mailing address. So once you are legally registered to vote, then you can go to your precinct. And I want to stop right here because a lot of people think, I don't know where to go and I don't want to have to call. And I just want to tell you, you can go to the North Carolina State Board of Election website. That is ncsbe.gov. And on the first page, there's a button there. You can do voter search. And you'll put in your first name, last name, county, date of birth. It'll pull up your name, and you can click on your name, and you can see everything about you, your address, your precincts, the districts you're voting for, and you can even scroll on down and get a sample ballot. So anyone can do that if you have access to a computer or a grandchild who can help you.
If you have access to a grandchild. Ours is 6 weeks old.
Well, it needs to be a little older, but they're a good resource, so don't discount
that. Now, Miss June, there's 14 states and Washington, D.C., I didn't realize this, that do not require any form of identification. And North Carolina is one of the states now that does require identification. And some of the states, and I don't know if you're aware, you probably are, that they don't require an ID. It's optional. So,
North Carolina had voted, I think, back in 2013 to have photo ID, and that just came about that we finally got that through, in the primary this year. But
didn't that kind of get disregarded because of some Supreme Court or some kind of a legal battle over that, if I recall?
Yeah, that's kind of deep in the weeds, so we won't get on it. But thank the Lord, it's finally here. So, but we do have, and there are different ID forms you can use: your driver's license, your passport. There are some approved student colleges who have IDs, some government IDs, but they have to be approved to be used as IDs.
And it has to be a picture ID, right?
A photo ID, yes.
Photo ID.
Now, there are exceptions. And the photo ID, if you've got a loved one who, let's say they're 85 years old, they haven't driven in 10 years, but if they had their last driver's license by age 65, they can still use that. Otherwise, if your photo ID, if your driver's license just expired like last month, you can still use it because you can use it if it's within a year of the expiration.
Okay, that's
date.
good to know.
Yes. So
I personally, I think that ought to be the standard everywhere. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna have a say so, because there are people in other states that their vote is going to affect me, who's going to be ruling over me. And so if they don't have the right laws or they don't have the right accountability, the right system to ensure that they have voter integrity, then, it ends up infecting the entire nation.
Right.
And so, if you have to have a driver's license to drive, if you have to have a Social Security number in order to have a job, then certainly voting is more important than that. There ought to be some kind of a standard there.
I tell people that since I've been in this, I think our right to vote even is right up there with your bank account. You need to make sure that you need to go online and make sure that your voter information in that system is correct. If you have loved ones that, elderly, you need to go and make sure that their voter information is correct and up to date because it's that important. So I look at it just like making sure your bank account's up to date, your information. There is one state, and I won't say which one because I'm afraid I have the wrong one, but they don't even require registration before you vote. You show up and vote, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So each state, that is the beauty. And sometimes there's good and bad about things. Is the beauty that each state is independent and has their own way instead of being one uniform way. But then in some things, it's like, man, we really kind of need to do things the same way.
Well, I think there was a time when America, the population was much smaller, more rural areas. You had states that are rural. I mean, I grew up in a state, Idaho, that the entire state population wasn't even close to the population of the major cities in this country. And so everybody knew each other, and so you didn't have to really worry about that. But things have changed. Add to that all of the immigration in the last, say, 20 years, people that have come into this nation, and I know that's another topic for another conversation, but the fact of the matter is I believe that the necessity for showing ID, proving that you qualify to vote before you're allowed to vote, times have changed, and I think that it ought to be an automatic. And for anyone that's against that, I have to question their real motives. I've heard it say that, well, it's racist, or it's discriminating against certain types of people. I just don't buy that. I think that there's something hidden behind that you wouldn't want to have that kind of integrity. And so continue. You were talking more about how things are done in our county to ensure that integrity.
Right.
Let me turn things back over to that process.
I want to go back to something that just popped in my brain, because in the spring, Arnold County was privileged to have the Smithsonian, I believe, to bring around to the library, our public library, display on voting. And so up there was some old poll books that were handwritten. And you got to think, this is back in like the 40s, and that's when a lot of women were homemakers. And so it was just really amazing to me that, like, I would see like Mrs. Randy Mitchell in the poll book, not Lynn Mitchell, but Mrs. Randy Mitchell. Oh. And, it's just handwritten. And so they didn't have any ID. Like you say, everybody knew everybody.
Right.
So
well,
that was just
back
interesting.
in 1789, I was doing some research on that, and it said...
You remember that, honey?
Oh, I'm so old. Okay, so most states were limited voting to white, male, and they had to be landowners back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've come a long way.
We have.
But, we do. It's like with technology or anything, we have to change and adapt to what we're at now. So, yeah. But anyway, the registration is all in place. We've got that in place. So let's say, Randy, you go and you vote today. So you're going to go in, and the poll workers are trained, by the way, and we are very blessed in Iredell County. We have a lot who have done this for years, and they are citizens who really want to serve. They're civil servants. And so, you go in there, and they are to ask your name. You state your name. They ask your address. You state your address. They may ask your date of birth, and you can write that down if you don't want others to hear. So anyway, then they will give you what is called an ATV form. And on that ATV form, it's going to have your information on there, which you are to look over. And I suggest everyone look that over and make sure that is correct. Mm-hmm. And you're signing that. So that's really signing an affidavit. I am who I say I am, and this is correct. And so they'll give you that ATV form to go over to a ballot table. And at the ballot table, they will see what type of ballot you're going to, especially on all the early voting sites, because they have to give you the correct ballot for your precinct. Depending on where you live, you have different ballot styles, because you may have a Board of Election candidate on there, or you may not, depending on where you live. Also, like our House of Representatives, North Carolina House of Representatives, in Iredell County, there's 3 different, depending on where you live, there's 3 different ones running. Mm-hmm. So that's why they have to give you the correct ballot style. So they will write on the top of your ballot, most likely, they're going to write the number of your ballot style or something. So it was a myth back several months ago that, they can't write on your ballot or it invalidates the ballot. No, they have to write things that go along with that information. So if you see somebody writing at the top a number or something, just know that is necessary. On your ballot, you may notice, too, around the outside edges, you won't see this on your sample ballot if you pull it up online, but the real ballots have little marks all the way around the outside edges.
I've noticed that.
That's so the machine will pick up, when you make a mark, the machines it's hard to show on the radio, but you're going horizontally and vertically, and that's how the machine picks up your choice. is by using those marks.
Okay.
So just know the black marks around the outside of the ballot is supposed to be there. That's how the machine reads it. So you make your choices. And let me just say, we have a choice for 3 commissioners. If you vote for 4, it's gonna kick that out. So if it'll kick your ballot out and ask, did you really mean it? Because it's not going to count any of them if you do too many. That's called an overvote.
So, question here.
Yes.
So, does that kick out your whole ballot or just that portion of?
Well, from the tabulator, it'll kick it out and ask it usually sends a message. Do you want to send it like this? You can. It won't count, and the other races will count, but that one. Or do you want to go back and spoil that ballot, because you can spoil a ballot and ask for another ballot.
So if that happens, I know after I get done voting, you go and you hand it to the volunteer. They put it through the machine. Does it instantly show that, and then they'll catch you before you leave the precinct?
So don't ever leave until you know that your ballot has been counted, and you will know that because the machine tabulator, let's say you stepped up and you were number 35, and then you cast your ballot. So then you go and you're number 36. So you wait until that machine says 36, or whatever order. I mean, I'm just picking a number. It could be 567.
So you should stand there and wait.
You should stand there and wait
I've
to
never
make sure.
done that.
Yeah, stand there and wait to make sure that your ballot is accepted.
Okay.
Oh, good.
All right.
In case it's kicked back out, you have an opportunity. And, you may have undervoted. You may say, I only want 2 people. Well, if all you did is 2, it may say you undervoted, but that's all you wanted. It'll take it.
Oh, it will take it. That's good news.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is very, very interesting. I look forward to talking about this even more after the break. And so, it's been a blessing to just be able to talk about, and it's been helpful to me. I know it's been helpful to our listeners. Welcome back. We're joined here today by June Reeves, member of the Iredell County Board of Elections. We're talking about election integrity, different things that we do at a county level to ensure that there is integrity, honesty in the voting process. And Sister June, you have said a lot of things that are very helpful, and I know there's more that people need to understand. We've talked about the voting machines and how all the ballots work here in our area. I can remember back, I think it was the George W. Bush election, was it that one with the hanging chads and the dimpled chads? And I can remember voting with those little punch things here. And even though it's a little bit more hassle to fill in the little circles like the Iowa basic test that I grew up with, it's definitely easier to ensure that shows. You're talking about voter registration and stuff. I had a pastor friend that sent me this just yesterday, and it's got a picture here of a cemetery, and in the cemetery is a U.S. Postal Service vehicle, and it says, "I saw a mail truck in the cemetery today. I guess they have started delivering the ballots." And so, I responded to him. I said, well, that's pretty funny. And I said, I don't know whether to send the little laughy emoji or the one with the tear running down the cheek, because, it's just hard to know what's true. And I think people are concerned. And so I appreciate that you are giving us that confidence that the people that are in charge, we can't control what other counties and other states do, but thankfully we've got some integrity, and
there was
I know that matters to you.
Yeah, there was something she was saying off air that was so interesting to me, and that was the fact that you can vote with a blank ballot. Tell us about that.
Yeah, if, some people are just frustrated and they don't know what they want to do, but they don't want somebody else possibly stealing their vote. So you can go and you can check in the process, like I mentioned, name, address, get your authorization to vote, take it to the take it to the ballot person, they'll give you a ballot, and you can choose not to vote for anybody and put your ballot through the machine. What that does, it takes your name off the list that you have already voted. You have cast your vote. You chose not to vote for anyone, but you cast, that's the vote you chose.
You made sure that nobody cheated and used your registered name in order to vote for their candidate.
Right.
That's pretty smart.
I suggest getting educated and find somebody you want to vote for, though. Is what I
Absolutely.
That would be better, I guess.
But that is, if you say some, well, you shouldn't see other people's ballots, but that's allowed to just do a blank ballot if that's what you choose. It's your choice. But you mentioned the little meme there, and our system always constantly. There are laws that they have list maintenance, and I do know that our office here is they're daily updating any deaths in Iredell County to take those off the list. If you have a loved one who's been in another county or another state and they've passed away, you can take their birth certificate to the Board of Elections office and have them to do that. I couldn't do it for you, but your close relative could. Also, they update, don't know if you know this, but felons are not allowed to vote. If they're still actively serving their sentence, they're not allowed. Let me back up. Felons who have completed their sentence can be reinstated. Those who are serving their sentence and have not finished their sentence are not allowed to vote.
Are they automatically reinstated, or do they have to go through
There is
a process?
The state notifies the counties, when a sentence has been fulfilled, and that allows them to be, reinstated. And there are people who may be in jail for a crime, but they've not been prosecuted yet. They still have a right to vote because they're not found guilty yet, so they still have that right.
So they'd have to get an absentee ballot.
They would have to do that. They would have to do that. So, and along the absentee ballot, that's a good segue to do this. So when someone requests an absentee ballot, they can do it in person, by mail. I have the ways in front of me here, but there are ways you can request the absentee ballot. And when it comes into the county office, they're going to make sure that you are a registered voter. They're going to look in their voter rolls and make sure your information matches what you sent them, because there's certain information you have to provide on the absentee form. So that will come into the office, and the office will check that and make sure you are a registered voter before they send it to you. And it doesn't have to go to the address that is your registered address, because we'll have a segue a little bit about what's going on now in the mountains, but it may go to another address because you're having to live somewhere else. So it'll go to the address you provide. And then you can fill that out and have the witnesses. You have to have two witnesses, not to witness how you marked your ballot, but to witness that you actually did fill out a ballot and put it in an envelope, and then witness your signature, I guess is what they're doing. And so you'd have to sign it, send your ID in a sleeve, and have two witnesses or a notary to notarize your.
So it sounds like there's some added scrutiny on absentee ballots. Is that correct?
Well, it's just as thorough as if you walk in. Yes,
okay.
Yes, because you still have to provide ID or an exception form if you, with what's going on in Western North Carolina, people's mailboxes were just swept away. There might be a reason that you do not have your driver's license, or maybe you just do not have access to a copier to be able to copy such a thing. So there's several exception forms if you don't, but they're still going to take your information and match it up with their records. Yeah. And make sure it all matches. Before
the broadcast is over today, we want to talk about the different areas affected by Hurricane Helene and how that's affecting absentee balloting, et cetera. So we want to get to that. But I did have a question. You talked about how the different voting machines work. We cast our ballot, it goes through the machine, and it either accepts it or it kicks it out or whatever the case may be. I was just curious, when we watch election night and when it shows all the different counties reporting, you can follow that up till 3 a.m, it seems like sometimes. But once those votes go into that machine, how is that processed? How does that get reported? And who does it get reported to? I've always been a little bit curious how that works. That's a very much behind-the-scenes thing that the voter's not going to see other than on the news.
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. And let me just tell you, like the early voting sites that opened up this morning, each one of those, as they bring up a machine, they have to run what's called zero tapes. And they're long, like a grocery-looking type receipt. They've got all the information about the machines, the precincts, and all these candidates, and it'll show 0, 0, 0, 0. It should show zeros all the way down. And the machine, it'll have the machine count on it, because the machines are like your automobile. You may have 60,000 miles on your automobile, but you might set that, you know how you can set it to see how much I went this trip? Mm-hmm. So machines are like that. You can see how many total they have.
Tripodometer.
The tripodometer. They'll open up with that. So like in the early voting, they don't close those machines down every day. It's a continuation throughout the whole time of early voting. But once early voting is done, they will close the machines up and they'll run tapes again, and that'll show the results for all the candidates. So there may be runners from different parties that want to be there, and the public can see that. If you get there before they open, which is too late now for early voting to see that.
So we're not just trusting the people who close out the machines every day and then they just write down on a little yellow sticky pad, here's how many, how the votes went. And
it comes out of the machine.
Okay.
So at the end of early voting, you can actually, as a citizen, be there. You wait until it's cleared out after closing and the last day, and you can see, those tapes come out. So they do have tapes. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So the zero tape, that tells them that there's no votes already on there. Nobody could have cheated
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then the ones at the end shows how many that machine gathered throughout the time. Yeah.
So from your experience, are there people that come down? I mean, now that early voting started here in North Carolina, are there people that from the various parties or whatever that actually go down there and oversee that and just make sure? I know that there's the opportunity for accountability. Does anyone actually exercise that?
There are poll observers who are trained from, I know, the Republican and the Democrat Party. And actually, whatever party's there, they can have up to 2 poll observers at each location.
Okay.
That's probably not going to happen because that many people don't volunteer. But if you're curious like I am, I've seen the whole process. So not only do those poll tapes come out, but then everything is on a flash drive. Every bit of that information is on a flash drive. So at the end, so I've had the question, well, I don't want to early vote because I don't think it's secure. Well, it's just as secure as anything else because your ballot's going to be in that box and it's going to be locked. Mm-hmm. And there's chain of custody. And even when those the tapes come out, the chief judge and another judge has to sign off on those. So not only is there the tape, but they have 2 people to witness that's correctly, that's what I'm saying.
I would think there would be opportunity for error no matter what system you use. People say, well, I don't trust the computer to count those. Well, if you've got people that are hand counting, there's potential for error.
You're right.
As well.
You're right.
Maybe not necessarily a lack of integrity, nothing intentional, but just making mistakes.
Well, you just think
hour after
hour of sitting there and looking at something, things are going to run together.
How much accountability is when you mail in a vote? Is it just one person putting in those votes, or how does that?
Well, and this is something else that's open to the public. We meet every Tuesday afternoon at 5:15 to accept absentee ballots. Mm-hmm. And what that means, the staff has already matched them up and made sure that they were who they said they were, and they check them in, and they stamp them with the date that they got them, and they check them in their computer system that checks them out of their system. Like I said, when someone goes to vote, then it's recorded so no one else can vote. Same thing with the absentees. When that absentee ballot comes in, they check that off their list in their system that they have this. So what we do then as the absentee ballots come in, we're looking over what they have already done, but to make sure that, yes, this person was in, has a Howard County address. I'm kind of looking at that their IDs are good in it's not expired by every year. They've got the 2 witness signatures or a notary on there. And so we're checking all that. So then after we check that as a board and we approve that, they're opening them up. Their staff, they have the 3 machines right now because of the volume, but their staff is opening those up and then they're running them through. So if one gets kicked back for a reason, there might be a mark up through the ballot that it won't allow that machine to take it.
So you have digital forensics in case something is questioned, but you also have a paper trail with the actual paper ballots that if they had to be counted, tabulated manually, they could if an election was contested, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have paper ballots. Yes,
so real quick, so if a mail-in ballot's sent, you have until what date to get that there and have time for your vote to be counted?
Well, all the absentee ballots have to be in by the end of Election Day, November 5th. They have to all be there. The last day to request an absentee ballot is October 29th. The last day to request one is October 29th.
But you're kind of pushing it with the time to mail it.
You
and get
are,
it there.
unless you got somebody a near relative who's going to drop it off for you. Okay. A near relative can do that.
So at the end of Election Day, every precinct, how do they report all of their votes from their precinct to Iredell County Board of Elections? Is who actually sends that count into the state?
We might have to do that when we come back, but they're all recorded on a flash drive, so we'll go through that process and come back.
Okay, stay tuned, folks. We're going to talk more about election integrity in Iredell County with Miss June Reeves. Welcome back. We've been talking about the subject of election integrity and particularly some things that are going on here in our state and in Iredell County. We have Miss June Reeves, a member of the Iredell Board of Elections with us. Miss June, thank you so much. It's been a joy to have you here on Salt and Light. Before the break, we were talking about how the different votes are not only tabulated, but how they're reported. And so I had to cut you off because of the break. So let's continue with that thought.
Yeah, well, we mentioned that there's a tape that they run and signed off on. There's also a flash drive that's in each machine. And as they take down the machines at the end of election, they will take those flash drives, and it's in a secure. Everything is a secure. It's a fascinating process if anybody wants to watch after the polls close. But they will take the flash drive, and they're in a secured pouch, and so they bring everything up to the Board of Elections. And so as they're coming in, we've got a team of people who's helping unload everything that they brought from the different precincts. But there's a flash drive then we take into an office that's on a computer, and the IT guy that works for the county, he is downloading that information from the flash drive to another computer. And he might get, 6 or 8 flash drives in because they're coming out throughout the night, depending on the distance from the Board of Elections.
A lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts. And so then he will take one flash drive, put that on one flash drive, and he will upload that on a computer that is solely used to communicate with the state of North Carolina. That's the only use that is to transport that information. So that's how they get it. And that's how they may have, 75% of the counties have reported, that kind of thing. So until all of the precincts are in, that's why you're seeing only, this percentage or that percentage and that kind of thing. So it's in real time. It's fascinating. So, yeah.
I always thought it was intriguing how I'll be watching it on election night, and they'll already call the winner, and they say 15% of the precincts reported. And I'm like, how can you do that? And every now and then the news media gets it wrong,
right?
And they don't predict that well. We're talking at the break about what's going on in the state, particularly in the mountains, with the effects of Hurricane Helene and. A lot of things are in disarray. We've got family.
We do.
In the
We have
mountains.
family in North Carolina, and actually, my mother is she's been without power, and she finally got power, and just the day before yesterday got water, and that was really difficult I think I was trying to figure out which one is worse, not to have power or not to have water. But I almost think the water thing is a bigger issue, and it's really hard, especially for the elderly. But so what happens, people have documents, like you said before, that have been washed away, their whole home and everything. How do those people, where will they go vote? Their precincts may change, right? And what do they need to do to vote in Western North Carolina?
Well, that's a good question. And a lot of people are worried about that, and I would be too. But the normal process of things is back in the summer, we meet as a board and we have to approve where our precincts are, the early voting sites and precincts and that kind of thing. So if there's any changes, we have to meet and approve that. But this is a disaster, emergency. And so some of the rules they met, our legislature met, the State Board of Elections have been meeting. So my latest update was from yesterday. There's an email, and if anyone can go on the State Board of Elections and look at this information, but it's numbered memo 2024-07, and it outlines all these things. So those counties affected, their boards can reconvene and meet, and because some of their precincts are gone. So they
Yeah,
can
I
set
wondered,
up.
or maybe not accessible.
Right. So the roads are out. So they can meet and come up with new precincts. And it's my understanding they can even add some if need be. So it's their responsibility to meet as their county boards and make those decisions. They do have to send all that information to the state. They can't just do it and nobody know. Mm-hmm. And then it's their responsibility to get it out, the word out as best they can through social media, through paper, through even mailings if they can do that. But there again, some of the post officers are damaged. So, and some of the shelters, they're instructed to even put up some in some of the places where people are going to get supplies to notify them where they can go. But like I said, there are exception forms if they don't have their identification. But they're still their boards are still going to match up their information. So I brought my notes, the absentee ballots from these 25 disaster areas. We can receive, any other county can receive their absentee ballots if they can't get them in their county. So that's what I was going to say. They can hand deliver them to any county board office. They can deliver it to the state board office, or any early voting site can accept their absentee ballots. So, and what's going to happen when, let's say it comes into Iredell County, states at the Iredell County Board of Elections office, every day they will document what they received and they will send it to the county that it belongs to. So if you have a loved one who's staying with you from Western North Carolina and they receive their absentee ballot, they hadn't filled it out yet, or they hopefully say, and even if they lost it, let's say they were mailed out and they lost it, they can call their county board and get another one sent.
Oh,
they
they
will scrap that one. I don't want to use the word scrap, but they will do away with that one and reissue. So be sure and have them to call their local board of elections and get their options.
It's just going to be very interesting to see how this is affecting the election in North Carolina, because there's so many people can't even get out of their driveways, even still today.
Right. And we know that the vote in this state on a national level could be pivotal. I mean, it could literally. I've been telling our church folks that, hey, you need to make sure that you vote for biblical values, because it may just be a few hundred votes that could totally swing the next 4 years for this entire country. Mm-hmm. And so we are one of those swing states that you don't know what the other states are going to do, and it could all come down to us. We don't know. There's probably maybe 7 or 8 states that could make that argument that it could come down to them, but depending on the math and how it all pans out, it could come down to this state. And so it is a very important vote. And I'm glad that there are things that are being put in place to ensure that we can have election integrity and know that our vote is going to count. As I said at the beginning of the broadcast here today, it's so imperative that people have trust in the credibility of what they're doing. Just as a pastor, I was thinking about this before the broadcast today. We have a missions program, and we present to our church missionaries that preach the gospel, and we ask people to give over and above their tithes and offerings for the cause of missions. And so the best thing that I can do to promote people giving is to make sure that we have credibility. We're selecting the best possible missionaries. We're getting people that are doing the job, and that we are being accountable for those funds that are donated for the cause of missions, that we are managing it with integrity, using it for the sole purpose in which it's been given. And so if you have that credibility, people will see the need and then they'll participate. And I heard something here not long ago. Someone said that like 36% of evangelical Christians don't even vote. And I thought, wow, what are they thinking? Maybe they have this false faith in God that, hey, God's just going to take care of everything. And listen, God is powerful. The Bible says that God sets up rulers and he takes down rulers. But I'm also reminded that Romans chapter 10 says, how shall they hear without a preacher? It's just like the whole gospel message. Mm-hmm. God knows who's going to be saved. God knows what he's going to do, but how shall they hear without a preacher? It is our responsibility to witness and to tell people about Jesus Christ, and then let God do what he's going to do. And so that's why, if you have been sitting back and being passive, that's a false view of faith. you need to get out and vote, if for nothing else, just out of appreciation for the sacrifice and the liberty that we have. We are just a few minutes left here in the broadcast. Miss June, any last words for our listeners?
Well, I wanted to also say that I don't know if you heard about the MATS team. It's MATS. It's a multi-partisan assistance team, which can go out in those neighborhoods too if they're requested. So, we usually use that around here for like care facilities to get out. But in those situations, they need to call. If they cannot get out, they need to see if there's another way someone can come to them.
Okay.
So that's also available. And there's some neighboring counties who will also set up a co-precinct. That's also allowed. So if they have any questions, voting will take place. And there are many things going on to help assist with that. So if they've got any questions, they need to reach out and see what their county's doing.
All right, Miss Lynn, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just appreciate what you said about it being our responsibility. And it is, and I guess as Christians, I could be as bold as say it's being irresponsible if we do not go out and use our God-given privilege to vote.
Yeah, God does what he wants to do, and we understand that, but he also gives us responsibility. That's the way that he created man in his image. He has a will. We have a will. We all make decisions, and so we want to make decisions based on God's will. And that's why I want to encourage you, if you're a Bible-believing Christian, vote the issues. Don't vote the personality. Vote the issues. And you can go to the Bible and you can read what God says about certain things that are very important issues that we're facing in this election. And I would say vote for the person that Jesus would vote for. And you're not going to find the perfect person, no doubt about that. But look at the issues and the agendas, and the one that lines up with the Bible the best, vote. But by all means, even if you vote for someone different than what I vote for, use and exercise that right and that privilege. Be a responsible citizen. Miss June, thank you so much. It's been a joy to have you on Salt and Light. And once again, appreciate your time. God bless you, Sister Lynn. As always, thank you for being on Salt and Light. Folks, have a great day.
And poles roping.
We appreciate you taking the time to join us at Salt and Light. It is our desire that you experience the joy of following Jesus Christ. He loves you, and he died on the cross for your sins. He will give you hope, peace, and eternal life if you will repent of your sins and trust him as your Savior. You may see yourself as a good person, but you will never be good enough to deserve heaven. You may see yourself as bad, but you can never be too bad for Jesus to forgive you. You can call upon him to save you this very moment. If you are a born-again Christian, we want to encourage you to obey Christ's command and be salt and light to those around you. We encourage you to find a Bible-believing church that does not compromise or water down the Bible, and get involved serving the Lord. If you have a Bible question or a particular issue you would like us to discuss on Salt and Light, visit our website at templebaptistnc.com. Click on the Salt and Light link. Once again, that's templebaptistnc.com. May the Lord bless you